In the world news, Israeli-Palestinian ceasefire comes into effect. Rwandan woman admits to recruiting girls for rebels. Duke of Cambridge blames BBC interview for mother's death. Good afternoon, welcome to the World News on ITV. I am Blessing A.G. The federal government has set up a 10-man committee to resolve the impasse between the Kaduna State government and the Nadra Labour Congress. Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, said this after a closed-door meeting with the NLC and representatives of Kaduna State government in Abuja. Ngige said that the meeting recognized that the current impasse was caused by a communication gap between the two parties. He said that the meeting resolved to constitute a bipartite committee comprising 6 representatives of state government and 3 officials of the NLC. Ngige added that the work plan is to itemize the structure and substructure in the state and local government of their activities.
To constitute a 10-man bipartite committee to resolve this impasse between the state government and the NLC.
The 10-man committee is expected to submit its report on 25th May 2021. The state government is drafting an electricity policy framework bill targeted at achieving uninterrupted power supply. Governor Godwin Obaseki disclosed this at a workshop of key players in the power sector in the state. Government House correspondent Patience Usagua has details.
Epileptic power supply has been discovered to be one of the main causes of poor economic growth and security challenges in the country. Governor Godwin Obaseki's meeting with the relevant stakeholders in the power sector is to profile solutions to the epileptic electricity supply to the state. This intends to achieve through a bill to repeal the Rural Electricity Board Law of 1972 and make provision for electricity and its generation, transmission and distribution in Edo State. Key factors impeding transmission, distribution, as well as cost for clean and adequate electricity distribution contained in the bill were discussed. Mr. Obaseki is relying on Section 14 A and B, which provides the state governments the power to generate, transmit and distribute electricity to areas not covered by the national grid system within the state.
It means therefore that we should now put in place a structure, a system to encourage investors to come and invest in generation. And for them to invest in generation and make money from their investments, we also have to let them understand and support them on how to take the generated power to the users, transporting the electricity within that territory and then distributing it in the state.
The Deputy Governor of Edo State, Comrade Philip Shaibu, expressed the belief that raising power transmission and distribution among residents to 600 megawatts within the next 5 years is achievable with the plans already on the ground.
For us as a government, we believe that the strategic location of Edo State in Nigeria make it imperative for the people and business enterprises to have access to stable and regular electricity supply.
The stakeholders in their distributions expressed concerns about integrating the chain and price regulation.
The point that is clearly made here is that the distribution sector is state business, state government business.
So straight away, what has been demonstrated today would work for us.
So issue number 1 is, do you have integration of generation, distribution, and generation, transmission, and distribution? Do you allow the generator to actually sell to the end customer? Because the biggest issue for a generator is, how am I going to get paid? And if I'm not talking to the end customer, Who am I talking to?
The Speaker of the State House of Assembly, Mr. Marcus Onobu, assured the stakeholders of the cooperation of the Parliament, including sensitizing constituents on the project.
Our responsibility is to represent our people, make laws for the good people of Edo State, and of course, oversight.
Other participants who joined the meeting via Zoom galvanized ideas and chart a way forward on the formation of electricity policy and legal framework. The bill will be transmitted to the Edo State House of Assembly by the first week of June 2021. Patience Osaugiwa reporting.
The House of Representatives wants the federal government to stop the planned increase in electricity tariff by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. National Assembly correspondent Charity Tanko reports that the planned increase, if allowed, will plunge Nigerians into more hardship.
The Electric Power Act of 2005, which established the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, provides the Commission's funding from 15% electricity charges paid by customers to distribution companies. To this end, the NEC, working with DISCOs, has increased electricity tariff 5 times since 2015. The House is concerned that, despite the increase, little or no positive impact is felt by Nigerians in terms of stable power supply.
Nigerian masses have gone through so much hardship in recent times, arising from acts of terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, farmers and herders crisis, with its toll on the agricultural activities, displacement from ancestral homes, loss of loved ones, starvation arising from inability to return to daily economic occupation, and loss of personal properties running into several millions of naira.
Similarly, the House is set to investigate transfer debt incurred by all electricity customers to new users by distribution companies. The House noted that distribution companies do not follow due process in the exercise.
Deal is done to curb the act of transferring debts incurred by other customers to new customers. The latter will consume to bear the burden of paying for the electricity they did not.
The House noted that distribution companies did not follow due process in the exercise. The House therefore mandated its Committee on Power to investigate the matter for further legislative action. Charity Tanko, ITV News, Abuja.
The military high command has promised to sustain onslaught against criminal elements until peace is restored to all parts of the country. The military spokesman, Brigadier General Bernard Onyuko, said this at the resumption of military media update on its operations. Correspondent John Tenner completes the reports.
A lot of activities have happened since the military last updated the public in a combined media chat with journalists in the month of February. Resuming the weekly briefing Thursday, the Acting Director, Defense Media Operations, Brigadier General Bernard Onyuko, assured that the military will sustain onslaught against criminal elements and their activities until there is peace in all parts of the country.
The plans and efforts of the criminal elements to perpetrate nefarious activities so as to discredit the government and efforts of the security forces will in no way deter us from sustaining the tempo of our operations.
General Bernard noted that the change of theater operational name from Operation Lafia Dole to Hardin K is to achieve oneness in Northeast operational environment. He said several terrorists and their top commanders, informants, have been neutralized since the last update.
As a result of these operations, our troops neutralized scores of terrorists and bandits, including senior Boko Haram and Islamic State of West African Province terrorists, and the Eastern Security Network commanders, as well as major bandit leaders.
Meanwhile, as part of effort to tackle activities of illegal oil theft, the director said several petroleum products, smuggled contraband goods, were recovered by troops.
In the maritime domain, our troops disrupted smuggling activities, immobilized illegal oil refining sites, arrested some perpetrators.
The military spokesman urged the general public to support the security agencies with credible information to aid its operational activities. John Tenner, ITV News, Abuja.
A Catholic priest, Reverend Father Alphonsus Bello, has been reportedly killed, while another priest, Reverend Father Joe Keke, was kidnapped by an unidentified gunman at St. Vincent Ferrer Catholic Church, Malumfashi, KATSINA State. It was learned that the gunman on Thursday night stormed the Catholic parish and started shooting into the air, leaving some people injured in the process. The National Social Communications Director, Catholic Secretariat of Nigeria, Padre Mike Omo, who confirmed the incident, said the suspected bandits dumped the lifeless body of Father Alphonsus Bello in a farmland behind the Catechetical Training School, Malumfashi, while the whereabouts of Father Joe Keke was still unknown. The Acting Inspector General of Police, Usman Baba, has put the Commissioners of Police in the Federal Capital Territory and Plateau State on the alert over imminent attacks by Boko Haram members. The alert was contained in a circular addressed to the two Commissioners of Police and signed by the Principal Staff Officer to the IGP, Idowu Owonhua. It said intelligence reports revealed that terrorists are planning to attack Abuja and Jos. The acting IGP directed the Commissioners of Police to review their security architecture and beef up security around government facilities, particularly in Abuja and Jos. The state government has commenced the desilting of the side drains of Ugbowo-Uselu-Lagos Road in Benin City less than 24 hours after Independent Television and Radio reported the plight of residents living in the area. Best Imbiri has details.
Workers busy removing debris from side drains on Uselu-Ugbowo-Lagos Road in Benin City after residents had attributed the flooding of the road to the debris which blocked them. The side drains were actually designed to channel the flood to Ikpoba River.
There was a time when this gutter now that is covered was through. Then there was less flooding. But now that it is totally covered, you can see vehicles parked on top of the gutter. This gutter is deep gutter. It's now covered with his sand. It's so devastating that if you experience rain of this area, you will pity for us.
One of the officials, Engineer Osa Omoege, said they have been directed to remove the debris from both drains as part of measures to tackle flooding of the road.
What we are doing here now, the part of desilting the city. We have so many areas. We have this one, that is Dr. Kota to Selu. From there to Selu Share. Then from Selu Share, we go to Ohoro. These are various areas we have to desil. We also have Owasota, Retretaku, and we have to desil it and to open it up to receive the inflow. And that is what we're doing, and that is what the state government wants us to do.
The exercise will last for 2 weeks. Best Mbire reporting.
You're watching the World News on Independent Television. Still to come, Israeli-Palestinian ceasefire comes into effect. You can watch ITV News on Roku TV in UK, America, Africa, and other parts of Europe, and also on Smart TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Android TV. You can view us on TSTV on channel 364 nationwide, on Star Times channel 130 and GoTV channel 107. Follow us also on our Twitter handle at ITV Radio NG, on YouTube at youtube.com/ITV Radio NG. Visit our website for more stories and live streaming at itvradio.ng.com/live, on Facebook at facebook.com/ITV Radio NG, on Instagram at ITV NG. Download the ITV app from your mobile Play Store. Stay tuned. On a foreign scene, the African Union has called for a democratic transition in Chad within 18 months following last month's military takeover. The AU said it categorically rejected an extension of the transition period. Chad's military council has promised to hold elections within 18 months. It is headed by the son of the former president, Idris Deby, who died last month after being injured fighting rebels. there have been regular opposition protests since the military took over, with dozens of activists arrested. Former Ghanaian President John Mahama has withdrawn his acceptance as a special African Union envoy to mediate talks over the political crisis in Somalia. Mr. Mahama noted the lack of support by the Somali federal government. He said the proposed assignment required that he enjoy the unalloyed support and cooperation of all political stakeholders. The African Union appointed Mr. Mahama as its special representative to Somalia on 7 May. But the Horn of African country questioned its impartiality. Relations between the two countries have been frayed in recent years, with Somalia accusing Kenya of meddling in its domestic political affairs, which Kenya denies. A ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip has come into effect. The ceasefire began early today, bringing to an end 11 days of fighting in which more than 240 people were killed, most of them in Gaza. Rosalind Ewuramin has details.
Palestinians on the streets of Gaza soon after the truce began. Both Israel and Hamas have claimed victory in the conflict. U.S. President Joe Biden said the ceasefire brought genuine opportunity for progress.
We've held intensive high-level discussions, hour by hour, literally. Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, and other Middle Eastern countries, with the aim of avoiding the sort of prolonged conflict we've seen in previous years when the hostilities have broken out.
Soon after it started today, large numbers of Palestinians took to the streets in cars and on foot to celebrate. In Gaza, drivers honked their horns while loudspeakers from mosques pronounced the victory of the resistance. Israel's military later said it was removing nearly all emergency restrictions on movement throughout the country. The fighting began on 10th May after weeks of rising Israeli-Palestinian tension in occupied East Jerusalem that culminated in clashes at a holy site revered by both Muslims and Jews. Hamas began firing rockets after warning Israel to withdraw from the site, triggering retaliatory airstrikes. At least 232 people, including more than 100 women and children, were killed in Gaza. Israel said at least 150 militants were among those killed in Gaza, but Hamas has not given casualty figures for fighters. 12 people, including 2 children, were also killed in Israel. Rosalind Ewuramin reporting.
South Asia, a region with a combined population of nearly 2 billion people, is facing its worst health crisis in recent memory. India and its neighbors are seeing a ferocious spike in coronavirus infections, leaving smaller countries like Sri Lanka particularly vulnerable. However, China is ramping up its relief efforts in these countries, which experts say could strengthen its influence there. Today, the streets of towns and cities across Sri Lanka will fall silent once again. People there will only be able to venture out of their homes for essentials until 25 May. Like its neighbors, Sri Lanka is now reporting around 3,000 cases a day, which is a more than 1,000% rise from a month ago. And despite having a largely free, widely accessible public health system that is regarded as the best in the region, hospitals in the island nation of 21 million people are struggling to cope. Elsewhere, thousands of Australian children are walking out of school to attend protests calling for action on climate change. About 50,000 students are expected at school strike for climate rallies across the country. It's the latest grassroots campaign by young people pushing for action on the climate crisis. The protesters are also calling for no new coal, oil and gas projects in Australia, including the controversial Adani mine. A 70-year-old David Serrano said he was worried about the future and wants the government to see the youth movement as one to be reckoned with. Australia has long faced criticism for refusing to set more ambitious emissions targets. Angele Mukadutiye, the only woman in a group of 21 Rwandans facing terrorism charges, is admitted to recruiting girls for a Rwandan opposition group that operated in neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. The former school inspector fled Rwanda in 1994 and took up the role of commissioner in charge of family and development at CNRD-FNN. The woman, aged 70, showed judges at the High Court in the capital, Kigali, some of her co-accused who were together with her in the CNRD-FNN. The group also includes Paul Rusesabagina, the man portrayed as hero in the 2004 film Hotel Rwanda about the Rwandan genocide. He denies any wrongdoing. The Duke of Cambridge has blamed BBC failings over its interview with his mother for fueling her paranoia and worsening his parents' relationship. After an inquiry found the BBC fell below its standards, Prince William said he was more saddened Diana never learned she had been deceived. He alleged that his mother was failed not just by a rogue reporter, but also by BBC bosses. The Duke of Sussex blamed a toxic media culture for his mother's death. In a separate segment, Prince Harry said that the ripple effect of a culture of exploitation and unethical practices ultimately took his mother's life. He expressed concern such practices were still widespread today. A Japanese driver faces possible punishment after he left the cockpit of a speeding bullet train for several minutes to go to the toilets. He had asked the conductor, who did not have a driver's license, to man the train, which was traveling at 150 kilometers per hour. The 36-year-old driver, who has not been named, had suffered a stomach ache and needed to use the toilet urgently. He called in a conductor into the cockpit to man the controls and then left for about 3 minutes to use the lavatory in a passenger cabin. The company's rules state that if the driver feels unwell, they must contact the Transport Command Center. They're also allowed to ask the conductor to take over the controls, but only if the conductor has a driver's license. The Hikari 633 was carrying 160 passengers at the time, but the incident reportedly did not affect the journey. However, the railway companies reported it to authorities and apologized. The first cargo ships have docked at Kenya's new deep-water port at LAMU, which was commissioned on Thursday by President Uhuru Kenyatta. The $3 billion facility is aimed to attract cargo destined for Kenya's landlocked neighbors, South Sudan and Ethiopia. Kenya is already building roads towards these countries from LAMU. Concerns have been expressed about security at the port, as the Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab regularly attacks the area. It is hoped that the new facility will ease pressure on Kenya's heavily congested Mombasa ports. And now talking sports, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder have verbally committed to a third fight days after an arbitration ruling halted fight talks between Fury and British champ Anthony Joshua. After the independent arbitrator ruled on Monday that WC heavyweight champion Fury must face Wilder, plans for a unification fight between Fury and Joshua were put on hold. The Wilder and Fury fight could be held as early as July 24 in Las Vegas, the American sports broadcaster said, adding that August 14 has been set aside as a backup date. Boxing promoter Bob Arum told newsmen that expects the contract could be signed in the coming days. Fury could get 60% of the purse, with Wilder receiving the lower sum. And now to end the world news on independent television, the highlights. A ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas and the Gaza Strip has come into effect. The ceasefire began early today, bringing to an end 11 days of fighting in which more than 240 people were killed, most of them in the Gaza. On behalf of the news producer, Roslyn Ewuramen, I am Blessing Aiche. Thank you for watching. Good afternoon.
Independent television news, truly independent.
Do you know that you have the right to quality broadcasting? The National Broadcasting Commission says any person, group of persons, or organization aggrieved by the content of a broadcast or the conduct of a broadcast station may lodge a complaint to the station and all right to the Director General, National Broadcasting Commission, number 20, Ibrahim Taiwo Street, Asokoro, Abuja, or send a mail via info@nbc.gov.ng. Please ensure that your complaint includes name of the broadcast station, title of the program, date and time of broadcast, and essence of the complaint. Also, remember to include